My name is Felix. I'm the CEO at Narwhal Studios, and a while back I was a previs artist who then turned into a manager, supervisor, and now I run Narwhal Studios. To stay relevant and to really stay on top of what's happening in tech and in the creative process, I conduct a lot of interviews, a lot of questions of my team. I have a lot of big discussions with friends of mine in the industry. And so I wanted to start sharing a lot of these conversations public. So that's what Narwhal Deep Dives is hoping to be for all of us. Now, Safaree Sosebee is the first episode. He's my best friend, but also my business partner, and he is the studio art director here at Narwhal. When we started this company, we used to co-supervise them. And so I have a background in previs, and Safaree has a background in VFX. And it was always my goal to make a process that was at the speed of previs, but the quality of VFX. And so enter Safaree. In the past 4 years, he's managed multiple teams on multiple projects. He himself has art directed multiple projects as well. And so I actually end up talking to Safaree a lot about what did they do, what was valuable in it, how can we improve. And this is the first episode where I wanted to bring Safaree in and talk about his traditional VFX process and how it is that it basically is applied now to virtual production. So Safaree, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Hello, I'm Safaree Sosebee. I come from post-production. I started off at Luma Pictures. For several years, I was working in environment design and character design for a bunch of independent films, and eventually got to bigger films like Marvel. And we worked on a lot of photorealistic environments and lighting and matte paintings and stuff like that. So I was very much involved with the invisible effects aspect of a lot of films. So I have the perspective of photorealism. Eventually, I started a company with Felix. That was Happy Mushroom. That was to get into the virtual art department and to get into VR, which was really hot at the time. And so we started getting into Unreal Engine, started to get into figuring out how to make that look as good as possible for pre-production. And since then, we worked on Mandalorian Season 1. I started becoming a bad supervisor on a little bit of Mandalorian Season 2, and then into Book of Boba Fett, supervising art director for a few other films and TV shows like Ant-Man and Mando Season 3, and then bad supervisor again for Ahsoka. Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving into the changing landscape of filmmaking from traditional methods to the rise of real-time production. And so it's a shift that both excites us and is quite challenging. And we're going to unpack this as much as we can. So, Safaree, are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Now, I wanted to start with a couple questions that we receive from a lot of the people that we talk to. The first one just being, could you please walk us through a high-level step-by-step of some of the virtual production approaches that you've applied to, let's say, The Mandalorian?
The main one being, since I'm involved with the virtual art department, and traditionally we've really dealt with environment design. We really got into VR review process. Like Unreal Engine has the multi-user session. That's where you can bring in multiple key creatives into VR in one set, and you can review a set. Everyone has their own perspective.
Before we even go that deep, at a high level, we're talking about how it's shifted in the process from the traditional filmmaking into virtual production. If you were going to give us and the viewers a step-by-step from, let's say, the script to concept art to set design, what does that look like in a virtual production process if you're there? If your approach is applied?
It's kind of let me say, it's in line with the traditional way of art department and all those different steps. We're just emphasizing those steps. We're not really replacing anything. We're just adding on to. And it is the same structure of like the writing is done, then concept arts kind of figured out, experimented with, and then into art departments will get into the set design and actually the physical build of it. And the virtual art department will help with the visualization of that. So it's kind of helping with the set design and the set dressing part of it. That then gets into the other traditional part where it's the production side. We hand off any beneficial information to art department from when we're visualizing those sets. And they use that for construction when they start to build the physical sets. And then for visual effects and post-production, those sets and that information gets passed off to vendors that will eventually create the visual effects either for IC VFX or for traditional means, for traditional VFX means.
So then a producer comes forward and you're an art director that is using virtual production in multiple different ways, right? So when a producer engages you or a production designer, what does it look like in a step-by-step manner from beginning to end? If you're going to put together, let's say, a schedule or guide in the most basic way, an overview of this process, what would you tell a production designer?
So this is getting into the project's already underway. Is that right? Like the production's kind of started there. They have a production designer.
When do they approach you? I mean, is that when they approach you? Is it when the project's on the way? Because if that's when it is, then sure, let's use that one as an example.
Yeah, production. The project is actually starting to get footing, and production designer is attached to it, and they're heading the team building, gathering the different key creatives like the DP auditions, and for us, they'll come to us to see what kind of team is needed for the production, for the pre-production side. And we'll start to figure out how long they need for that team to be on their pre-production side. That ends up being, it fluctuates the team size, whether it's 12 or 20. We do work with them to make sure that we understand their need for a team like this. So if it's for ICVFX or for traditional means, green screen shoots, whatever they're trying to get out of the virtual art department or any other team, so that we understand that the team members that we're going to put together, the team comp, it makes sense for their project. So they'll approach us, they'll start talking kind of a little bit of strategizing on what kind of team they need. And then we'll start to put together a team comp with an initial schedule that gets iterated on. So we'll go back and forth with them, kind of seeing if it makes sense for them to have this amount of time, if there's any schedule tweaks on their end, whether it's too long or too short. And then that's before our team actually gets on. And then once the team is established and the schedule is approved, we start to kind of ramp in that team so that there's a leadership that starts to get the kickoff of whatever sets that they understand as like the sets that are actually not in fluctuation. So there are some sets that could be a little bit ambiguous. They don't really know if that's going to be a set that they want us to visualize. So they'll start off with the sets they actually know. They're confirmed these are the actual sets. So we get into a kickoff, which is concept art. Typically that's created before we're on. And they'll give us that concept art with some reference. We'll start to block out those scenes, whether it's with 3D geometry that they've given to us, or we just start with 3D geometry. That's typically a virtual white card model. That's basic shapes and grayscale models. That is, for a few weeks, we start to kind of vibe and riff on the scale and placement of all these different things. That's the VAD team with the production designer. If there's a DP on board, then they'll be involved with it. But Sometimes the DP doesn't come on until a little bit later, like a couple or a few months down the line. Then we get into if those are progressing nicely, and that's reviewed by the director, we start to look dev those scenes. And that's putting on textures, upraising the models, and getting into lighting.
You said that we have a kickoff with concept art. Then that from there, it's identified if there's 3D scenes. And so that the VAD team then works with the production designer. So as a virtual production art director that specializes in virtual art department, I want to ask you, what is the virtual art department, which is my next question. But before I get there, the leadership that you are solving challenges for, who are they? And what are some of those challenges that you're solving?
Oh, the leadership that the VAD is under and helps kind of facilitate problem solving is the production designer sits at the top, and they're connecting with us on a daily basis. They want to know how their physical sets are going to look and the virtual set extension. And specifically for the several projects that included IC VFX, which is the Mandalorian and Ahsoka series, it's very much specific to the IC VFX sets. So we'll start on basic blockout that is figuring out mostly the virtual side, but sometimes the production designer will want to understand the physical set in comparison to the virtual. And that's when we start to actually do the mirroring or the marriaging of if the physical set looks like this, then the virtual set has to look like this. And so that sometimes those updates to the physical set are on a daily basis. So we facilitate ingesting those physical sets from set designers and the art department team, so that the production designer can see it in a quickly with the right lighting and the right set, the virtual set extension. So that's the production designer with the primary objective of visualizing the set as a whole. The DP is next in line with understanding the overall lighting. So the overall lighting of the set, we develop so that they understand what the virtual is going to look like, but at the same time, we're strategizing on what the physical lighting is going to be. They're figuring out the volume is going to be placed a certain way. They know what LED screens to take out of the ceilings or the top portion of the wall. So they start to understand, okay, if I can take out these portions of the LED screens, then the sun should be around this area. So it's about figuring out the lighting for the entirety of the set, for both virtual and the physical, as well as the camera placement of where the action the actors are. So we plan out the chess pieces along where they're going to be placed in the physical set, and then they go in either VR or not VR, and they place cameras that make sense with the scene. So we'll plan out where we need to really emphasize our workflow or our attention with these placed cameras. Those are the two biggest things. We help with DPs on planning out what they're wanting to do on the day of the shoot.
We actually end that one a little bit short because there's a whole hour after this that we're going to release later. And we hope that you tune in and check out some more episodes. To learn more about Narwhal Studios, visit our website, narwhalstudios.com, or come and check out the podcast that we'll be releasing next week. Thank you.